in the States. So thank you all very much for welcoming us and making our time so much fun. Anyway, I thought I would just sort of briefly touch on my career first, and I can't believe it when I hear what I've done. It honestly doesn't seem that I've done 6 Olympics and that I've been at it for such a long time, because I still absolutely love the sport and I'm not going to stop yet. But yeah, it began when I was really little. I was one of these horsey young girls who, just was mad keen to ride, and I don't know where it came from because neither my mother or father had any interest in horses. And but I've always had this sort of passion to want to be around them. And as a little girl, I started riding the vicar's pony in our village. That's where it all began. And when Mum couldn't find me, she knew where I was, in the field with him. And sort of progressed from there. I used to go off on my bicycle around looking for ponies and finding ones in fields, and then finding out who owned them and whether I could possibly ride them. So I must be a real pest. And yeah, we've obviously got a great pony club system in Great Britain, and I became a member as soon as I was able. You can join even if you don't have your own pony, and so I joined and took part in all the sort of non-riding activities, and through Pony Club then got rides on different ponies. I've always begged Mum and Dad, please can I have a pony of my own, and they were saying, no, we've got, we didn't have any land. We lived in a little cottage that was owned by the church, the village, and my father had been a naval officer, Royal Naval Officer, and had retired from the Navy because he'd had a really bad head injury. He'd had a motorcycle accident after he'd been playing squash for the Royal Navy. That's where I was getting my competitive spirit from. And on his way back, he had a motorcycle accident and had a very bad head injury. He was very poorly, and when he became well enough, we as a family moved to this little village, and he became verger of the village church, and he lived in a little cottage that the church owned, and lived off my father's naval pension. So we didn't sort of have money or land or anything. So Mum and Dad were very much, you can't have a pony until you're much older and know how to look after them. And anyway, eventually when I was 13 years old, Mum and Dad gave in, realised it wasn't just a passing phase, and the vicar let me borrow a stable, and the local farmer let me borrow a field, and that's where it all sort of started, having my own pony. And it was about at that age, at about 12 or 13, that I went on the Pony Club coach trip to Paddington Horse Trials, and I didn't sort of really know what eventing was all about. We didn't have television as a family, so I was a bit sort of ignorant of, I hadn't sort of watched it even on telly. But anyway, went on the coach trip and couldn't believe when I arrived at Badminton, seeing all these shiny horses and shiny riders, and they all seemed so brave, galloping, these huge great fences, and everybody seemed so rich, and it was so exciting. And I came away from there thinking, this is what I'd love to do. I really want to ride at Badminton one day. But the other part of me thought, really, realistically, I'll never manage to get to that level. But then when anybody asked me after that, as I was sort of growing older, what do you want to do when you're older? I'd say, I want to ride at Badminton Horse Trials. And I used to, follow the event, went each year, and I've still got the programmes of, all those years ago, and used to study all the fences and know how high they were and wide they were, and anyway. It was, a real sort of aim for me to get to Badminton. I left school at 16 as soon as I was allowed, and luckily Mum and Dad were very supportive. And off I went and worked for a lady called Sheila Wilcox, who, I don't know if some of you may have heard of her. She was a top event rider in her day, one of the first female event riders, really, to have great success. And she sadly, after years of competing competing at the top level, had had a serious fall, a serious back break, which paralysed her and prevented her from competing. But she ran this yard, which was, I suppose, really a dealing yard, buying and selling horses, and it was her that I went and worked for. And in hindsight, thinking back, it was such a good move that I went and worked there. I was there for 3 years, and I was sort of desperate to compete, but I didn't get sort of much chance of that with her. But I feel the time I spent with her, I sort of formed a sort of broad base of knowledge to then build my career on. And I was sort of petrified of Sheila Wilcox. She was really sort of bossy and strict, and everything had to be perfect in the yard. Her stable management was just incredible as far as the mucking out. There wasn't allowed to be a cobweb inside. We had to window lean the windows, the stable windows inside and out twice a week, and they were like little houses, the stables, and the horses always had to be perfectly turned out and beautifully pulled manes and tails, and they, it was everything, had to be done absolutely correctly. And we used to start work at 5:30 in the morning and finish at 6 o'clock in the evening, and it was hard work, but it was, I say, fantastic experience. And I got a chance to ride lots of horses. Lucky for me, the day before I arrived, her head girl a horse had come over backwards and had broken her pelvis, and she'd been carted off to hospital, which was quite lucky for me. Because when I arrived, she was short of a rider, and so I was able to start riding straight away. And I remember, I thought I was quite good when I went there. I'd had success with my pony and got to the Pony Club Championships and done all this. I remember it took me a whole week to learn to ride a 20-metre circle at trot. And, she it was shattering for me, thinking I was quite good, and I couldn't even trot a 20-metre circle as, to how she wanted it done. So, but she was like that, ever so strict. So fantastic training. And also during my time there, what also I learned so much was how to cope with young horses and producing young horses. And she used to buy the sales, mainly from Ascot and Doncaster sales. She loved big horses that moved well. Didn't mind if they were naughty, that was no problem. And they used to come back, and the routine was for it to tack up a horse, lead it into the outdoor school, and we had this sort of skull cap and body protector, and I was given the leg up, and we'd sort of see what happened. And I was really scared of Sheila. I would never hardly dare to speak to her unless she spoke to me, and I was very shy in those days as well, so I used to just go around doing my work. And she used to say to me as I was giving the leg up, she'd say, "Don't you dare fall off." And it was great, and I did fall off at times, but I honestly was more scared of Sheila than I was of this no horse that, some of the horses were fine, but obviously we had a number of horses that had real behaviour problems and bucked and reared and napped and did things, and it was good because I was scared of Sheila. It made me not so scared of the horse I was on, and taught me how to hang on, taught me my stickability. So, and then, working with these horses, why is this horse doing this? The most common reason for a horse to misbehave is because it doesn't really understand or trust the rider on top. And then it was, learning how to get this horse to use all the energy it's using against you, to then, to work with you and to use that to progress. So anyway, had great times there, and then after 3 years decided I'm really desperate to try and compete, and came back to sort of Regis Village, little village in Devon, and Mum and Dad said, right, I really want to be an event rider, and they said, well, how? You've got no money and no land. But lucky for me, there was an old farmyard on the outskirts of the village that the farmer wasn't using, and he was trying to get planning permission to convert it into houses. And anyway, I approached him and asked if I could make a couple of the cow sheds into stables, and he was very happy for me to do that. And I did. I sort of took over the yard over a sort of number of years, gradually made these small cow sheds into stables. and started building up quite a bit of a business there through what I'd learned at Sheila's. You know, took in horses to break in, to school on, took in liveries, people going away on holiday. Then used to do all sorts of odd jobs to supplement the horses, and I did a butcher's delivery around for 3 years, delivering meat for the local butcher's shop twice, 2 mornings a week. And I used to, there were a couple of gardening jobs I did, and hoovered, cleaning people's houses, and even used to clean the campsite loos. They used to, worst job, but they paid ever so well. So it's just work, you know, work like mad, all that sort of thing to try and make ends meet. And started to compete, and you know, did have horses, started eventing and progressing, but always had to sell a horse if it was, you know, worth good money, and I was offered decent money, it had to go, so it was a sort of bit of a struggle. And I was desperate to get sponsorship, but you know, when you haven't sort of done anything or proven yourself, you know, how, you know, it's difficult enough to get sponsorship at my level, let alone when you're starting off. But anyway, sort of kept working hard, and then I had this horse, Diver's Rock, who I bought him, he was advertised in the Horse and Hound, £2,800, and he'd been a top show horse, he'd been to Wembley as a show horse. He was beautiful, big, 17.3, I wouldn't buy one so big now. It was beautiful, and I couldn't believe that he was in the price range for me to buy, but he'd done some pure dressage but hadn't been good enough, and somebody had tried to jump him and had given up. And anyway, so I bought him, and he luckily turned out to be a fantastic cross-country horse. And he was the first horse then, you know, this was sort of 6 or 7 years later, it was 1985, that I did get to that level of actually getting to badminton horse trials. And I nearly, the sort of previous year, I'd been approached by some people and they'd offered me lots of money, and I was so torn as to what to do. I needed the money, but I could feel, you know, he was such a great cross-country horse. And I ummed and ahed, and then I said to them, no, sorry, I'd rather be famous than rich. And it was a great decision not to sell him, because he did get me to badminton. And gosh, I remember getting to badminton, and the main thing I remember, I was so excited, and people said, "You're really nervous?" And I said, "No, I'm just really excited to be here. You know, this is my dream to get to this event." And then galloping across country, you know, I remember it really clearly, and galloping and jumping, you know, the famous fences, jumping through the quarry and Luckington Lane crossing and Huntsman's Close and through the lake, and I didn't get wet. And it was just extraordinary, and somehow, I did, because I was a real, you know, I'm a novice rider, and I look at the pictures from those days, I looked dreadful. But anyway, I managed to come 7th, which was quite amazing. I thought I was the bee's knees, and went back home to Devon, and there was a lady who came up to me in the village, and, "How did you do, dear?" And I said, "Oh, I came 7th. And she said, "Never mind, you might do better next year." It was a really good comment, because you know, just a bit big-headed about the whole thing. Brought me back down to earth. Anyway, it was all, you know, at this time needed sponsorship, and very luckily met up with a lady and a husband and wife who ran a company called the Carphone Group. They were the retailers, first retailers of mobile telephones, and luckily for me, they didn't have children, and they very much sort of latched onto me, which was absolutely fantastic. It was quite funny how we first met. A dinner was arranged. I had to make up a portfolio, and they'd asked, you know, what I'd done in the past and what I'd done in the future, and I tried to make up this sort of professional-looking file, and got a lady up the road to do the typing, and got all my best photographs and stuck them in, sent the portfolio off to Graham and Jill Thomas, and I'd heard through the grapevine that Ginny, the wife, she was quite mad keen about animals generally, and I had a photograph of me holding a little gosling, so it had nothing to do with horses, but you know, I thought I looked quite good in the picture, so I'd sort of stick that in for good measure. And apparently Ginny was, you know, looking through horses,
picture of Mary and the little goose and said to her husband, oh, you know, she obviously loves animals, you know, do let's meet her. So, you know, that was quite a good meet.